Guys, I really tried coming up with a pun for this one, but in our first attempt, we came up with Chuba Hubbard bubblegum. So
Don't
it
say
wasn't.
we. Don't say
It,
we. That was all Mike, and it was bad. It was really bad. So look for that clip in a future blooper video. We added that to the folder. No, but getting on track, here we are with Chuba Hubbard, the running back from Oklahoma State. In terms of his production, the statistics, um, I don't really know what I'm supposed to say because this man was essentially a Heisman finalist in 2019. He was just snubbed, but I don't know how you run for 2,094 yards and then follow that up with the season that he did. He did get hurt, an ankle injury, ends up after 7 games opting out of the rest of the season. Mike, what are your kind of thoughts on Chuba in terms of his background, his production, etc.?
oh, there's a lot of red flags. A lot of red flags. Um, it just he's a head scratcher to say the least. That it's just crazy. Like just looking at it, 2,000 yards. Like that's not a number, even if it is Big 12 football, which it feels like everything's inflated in the Big 12. Um, but especially that next season, you think he'd make a step forward, but like it's he has more than half the games that he did the previous year. He has less carries, but it's not even close. It's almost a 25% of the yards of the previous year.
But even the
Um,
yards per carry, even the yards per carry is
yeah,
down a ton. Like that's the thing. It's like what exactly happened here that made this guy go from okay, if he could declare he'd be a potential first, second round pick in the minds of many, to I've seen him outside of people's top 10 running back rankings. And I mean, I'm probably a little bit higher on him than Mike will reveal here soon, but I think Mike's in that same boat with the outside the top 10 in some regards. I just don't know how you go from the best statistical season that we've seen out of any running back that we've done to this point. Not there was no season Najee had better than that. There was no season ETN had better than that. Javante and Michael Carter, who we'll do in a future video, their seasons combined are barely as good as Chuba's 2019, but then just fell off a cliff in some regard. And his supporting cast certainly didn't help. So he had a bad O line, he had very bad quarterback play, and you expect some regression potentially. I know Mike said you'd obviously hope for him to improve, but it's tough to improve on 2,100 yards. So you'd expect him to maybe take a step back, but that's a couple steps back to say the least. So with that being said, Mike, are you ready to get into my grade or what?
well, let's get it.
So with Chuba, I know Mike is gonna hate some of these grades, right? But I think that he has solid vision, considering a lot of the holes that he's dealt in terms of his offensive line. I think that the speed and acceleration, a lot of people call him like a speed back, and I'm just confused. I'll just put it right there. I'm confused. And I know Mike is as well. To this point, he has the lowest speed and acceleration grade that I've given anybody. Even though, I mean, I was reading people last year saying that he would run a 4.38 or something. Like, I don't know where I'm seeing like 4.5 on like with my eyes. I don't know. Maybe slower, maybe not slower, but I see somebody in that range. Agility, I don't see much, but I also don't see much power. So now we're talking what the heck is he good at, right? I think that he can take some hits in terms of making plays after contact. In terms of pass protection, I thought he was solid in terms of his willingness. Again, this is kind of what we had with Javante, where maybe the effectiveness wasn't there, but he at least was stepping up to guys, putting a shoulder. There were a couple really nice cut blocks that he had. In terms of he was being effective when he was chipping guys. That's where I graded him a 6.5. I know Mike absolutely hates that grade, based off what we talked about before this. I think as a pass catcher, he was virtually non-existent. Right, we could go back to those stats, but he was a 2,000 yard rusher, not a not a pass catcher. And in terms of his size and athleticism, I just think he's slightly above average, but nothing all that crazy. Mike, I know you're going to have problems with this, but do you think at least that a late fourth rounder is an acceptable grade for Chuba?
Um, yeah, on the late end, sure. Why not? Once you get to the fourth round, especially the end of the fourth round, that's when it's kind of all hell breaks loose. You could usually still find some people that fell in the draft. There's always those occasional names, which I guarantee you I'd rather see than Chuba. But that's yeah, sure, late fourth. I think that's where it is. Like especially you're hoping that you could find whatever he had in 2019, revamp his, whatever was different. We're not sure exactly what, but find whatever spark was missing in 2020, and be able to, relight that flame. But back to your pass protection, chops and chips don't get you a 6.5. That's absolutely ridiculous. We were
No, but
just
the
watching some.
willingness does. The willingness does, though. That's the like he was stepping up to guys, and even though he was getting blown back sometimes, 100%. But like, get him in an NFL weight room. I think that he can put weight on his frame. No question. He's 6 foot 208 right now. I wouldn't hate if in the NFL he's 6 foot 220. I think that the ability to pass block is there. I think that he was better on film than Najee was. The thing that held up Najee's grade was the fact that again he has the size and he has the potential to do it. I think it's the same with Chuba.
Yeah, I don't know about that. We were one of the plays we watched was a reverse. For some reason, they had Chuba as lead blocker, which it's actually Oklahoma State's fault. It's not his, but slot receiver basically pushed Chuba back into the wide receiver, and I would credit Chuba with the tackle. Like that's a problem. Like that's a problem. He was It wasn't a D tackle, a D end, a linebacker. It was a cornerback. So you tell me how he's stacking up against any in the front seven in the NFL. He's not. Like Aaron Donald coming. I don't care. It's a chip. Okay.
No, but I don't
This
care if who's
Brock.
blocking Aaron Donald. That's not fair. Nobody's blocking Aaron Donald, right? But I think that you could teach a guy to who's willing to block. I think you can teach him to block. So that's where the grade came in. What are your thoughts on the rest of the breakdown, Mike? In terms of the speed, did you see this speed electric back even in 2019? I know you watched some of his 2019 stuff too. Did you see it then or not really?
No, I didn't see it there either. I'm not sure where he likes making plays on the outside, and I feel like just naturally we always come with that assumption. If they like to get to the outside, a lot of their plays are made in the open space. That means speed just correlates. Speed and acceleration just follows. That is not the case. I don't think that's the case at all. Just because he can't make plays inside, or at least he didn't do prominently, in his career at Oklahoma State. Um, but so he's not a power back, so he automatically has to be speed and acceleration. No, he could just be, I wouldn't even say mediocre at bat, but he could just, be able to do both at just a very limited range. And I don't even like his vision, not to the 16 level. I don't know. I'm probably a little bit lower, as we've said on Chuba Hubba, than you are, but
I think that a lot of the vision came from me with when he was behind the line of scrimmage. I felt like he was already dealing with a bad offensive line, but I did like his patience, which is kind of baked into that grade. You might say he's just slow, right? And I there might not be a rebuttal that I have to that, but I did like some of what he did in that West Virginia game, for example, where you see holes open up and he's making one cut, two cut, anticipating where the defenders are going and making good reads off of that. Again, I think that's something pretty tough to train. And if you don't have good vision, I don't know how you're getting 2,000 yards behind that offensive line, to say the least. But with that being said, I do think that he's a mystery, right? I think that we both agree there, even though I am slightly higher on him than you. I do have him the fourth best or fifth best running back that we've graded to this point by far. I had to even extend the scale there to fit him in on the overall grade, as you can see down in the low 60s. But it really is just how did this man have such a great 2019, and can you rekindle that flame? I think you put that really well. And if I'm if I'm a team that maybe not a rebuilding team, no chance. But if I'm a team that is contending, maybe with this lowered salary cap, you're gonna let say Mark Ingram go. Obviously, maybe the Ravens aren't a great fit, but they have a solid offensive line, and that's kind of what I think he needs. He needs a decent offensive line, somewhere that could maybe open up those holes, make it so he has enough speed and acceleration. He has enough power to work in that offense, and then you could maybe see him exceed expectations. I know you, yeah, I could just tell by the way you're stretching you don't agree, but how do you obviously you think he's the worst of anybody we've graded so far? Do you have any hope for him? I guess I could say.
yeah, sure. You could have any like James Robinson for the Jags last year was 1,000 yard wide like running back. So he could make it. Good situation. I think there's plenty of other different, I guess just types of running back. If I'm taking a running back in the fourth, fifth round, in the later rounds, I'm not trying to find an all around well versed back. At that point, I'm trying to find a specialist. If I have a number one already, what something that might complement him. Is there something they could add to the team? And I just don't see it. He's not a special teams player, so you're not getting much there. If it's short yardage situations, I'm not really putting him in. If I'm looking for a pass catching back, um, I'm not putting Chuba in. Like I just don't see what he really brings to your team other than prime practice squad material.
That's terrible. So with that being said, though, I do have a comp which I know you're going to hate just based off what you said, but I think that in terms of him maybe not having any overwhelming strengths, I kind of went with him as James Conner coming out of Pitt, where a fourth round guy. He was a fourth round guy, and you didn't really see much speed. You saw vision and patience, and then he got put into a good situation, and you see what you see, right? Obviously now people are a little bit disappointed, but I think he's not incredibly powerful. He's not great at catching the ball out of the backfield necessarily. There's really nothing that he should excel at, and I think that's kind of where I went with my comparison for Chuba, because again, we've seen him get 2,000 yards. He can do it, but I think the right pieces have to be in place, if that makes sense. And I think the same can be kind of said about a James Conner type guy, even though Conner's a little bit better than I would say Chuba is, in my opinion.
That's ridiculous. I don't see it. James Conner definitely has a lot more power behind himself than my boy Chuba does. Well, I want to call him my boy. I have nothing against the man. I'm just I'm hate. I'm not hating on him. I guarantee you, Chuba is a. I can't guarantee, but Chuba's probably a great guy. But is he a James Conner? Absolutely not. So I'm not. I'm not.
I
I'm
think the
not
problem
feeling you
is,
there.
but I'm saying play style wise, I think you're looking at what Connor is now, whereas what Connor was drafted as, and that was a 100% backup to a good running back or a great running back in Le'Veon Bell. Nobody expected him to be what he is now when he was drafted. So I think that there's just as many red flags, maybe not as many, but there's red flags, and I think that there's questions about his strengths. I guess that's the only place I went with it in terms of the play style. I don't necessarily think that the results are going to be the same, especially if he ends up in Jacksonville, for example, or Cincinnati. I think Chuba, most people probably won't hear from him again for a while, to say the least. But I do think if he goes to a decent team as that second running back, that spell guy, he could just be a solid couple carries a game. I don't know. Obviously you disagree, but I think this is just where we're gonna have to agree to disagree, Mike. No,
Yeah, I think there's some better options out there. So we will agree to disagree.
no, I'll agree with that. There are some better options out there. He is the fifth highest that we've graded to this point, but let's not get it confused that he is the fifth highest in the class. Let's just put that out there. And if we continue to grade more running backs, you guys will see how the board falls out as it does. So with that being said, I think that's all we got for you guys. I think we're mic'd up, and now we're micing out. Peace, guys.
Deuces.